Okay, the Module 5 of the HACCP Intermediate course, or Level 3, Preparing for Implementation. As I've mentioned earlier, this can be used for Level 2. So the aim of this Module 5 is to prepare delegates for implementation of HACCP. And the learning outcomes, by the end of this unit, delegates will be able to explain the steps involved in the implementation of HACCP based on Codex Alimentarius, that group of experts that sit in various parts of the world to discuss food safety issues. Identify the need for a multidisciplinary approach when appointing the HACCP team. Name the sources of information available to the HACCP team. Describe the product, recipe, process, and state why it's important to identify the likely customers. Okay, so the Codex implementation of HACCP. First of all, and this comes in 12 steps, you need to assemble and train the HACCP team. And the team needs to define the terms of reference and the scope of the study. Describe the product, recipe, and process. Identify the intended use of the product. Construct a flow diagram. And on-site validation of flow diagram. In other words, walk the talk. That's what validation means as regards HACCP. And then we go on to the 7 steps of HACCP. Identify the hazards, the risk, severity, and control measures for each hazard. So that's Principle 1. Determine critical control points using the decision tree, which is Principle 2. Principle 3. Establish critical limits for each critical control point. Principle 4. Establish a monitoring system for each critical control point. Establish corrective actions to be taken when a critical control point is out of control. That's Principle 5. Principle 6. Establish verification procedures. And Principle 7. Establish documentation and record keeping. You need to assemble and train the HACCP team. The HACCP team is a group of people with appropriate expertise who develop and implement the HACCP system. The size of the team must be proportionate, multidisciplinary, have adequate resources, team expertise, knowledge of hazards, risks and controls, technology of process, food microbiology, engineering and equipment, product characteristics and the process, quality assurance, packaging and distribution, records and documentation and maintenance of those records and documentation, and team responsibilities. Now the team expertise, for example, you would have perhaps a microbiologist as part of the team, perhaps a person from engineering as part of the team, somebody from quality assurance, somebody from the admin department who can or will look after the records and documentation, somebody from the transport department looking after the distribution part. So each person has to have their own expertise, something they can bring to the table, if you like. Sources of information could come from the HACCP team members themselves, the individual experts in their own particular field, from consultants, laboratories and research organisations and universities are a good source of information, from public analysts, national food poisoning statistics, seminars, codes of practice, enforcement officers, environmental health practitioners for example, Food Standards Agency, Health Protection Agency, trade associations, in-house experts, mathematical modelling, customers, suppliers, customer complaints, television, radio, textbooks, magazines, libraries, and the internet. The internet is an excellent resource, but use it wisely. Obviously, don't take everything that Wikipedia says as cast in tablets of stone, but it is a good start. Probably one of the best places to look is something called Google Scholar, You can go into Google and just look for Scholar, and I think it's little four little squares you click on, and it gives you all the alternative Google sites. But Google Scholar actually gives you the details of peer recorded information, articles, especially relating to scientific subjects with food. Define the terms of reference. You need to decide which hazards are applicable to your system. Microbiological, physical, chemical. Is it one of those, some of those, or all of them? Decide on the scope. Which operation or process are you going to introduce HACCP into? Which products are going to be part of the HACCP system? Which steps, including start and finish? For example, it might just be in the farm, in the slaughterhouse, in the butchers, or the end customer in the cafe, or it could be a combination of all four. Describe the product, recipe, process, and intended use. Potential hazards and risks. You need to look at those. You need to look at the raw ingredients, make sure they come from an approved, reputable supplier. What is the suitability for bacterial multiplication in the foodstuff? The composition, preservatives being used, the pH value, which is the acidity-alkalinity value. Obviously, bacteria like a neutral pH of about 7. So any product which is around about that pH, such as meat, will cause a problem and can cause a problem because of bacterial growth. AW, the availability of water or moisture, and the toxicity. Methods of processing, cooking, storage, and distribution. The intended shelf life. Packaging and label instructions. Legal requirements and standards. Allergies, and obviously since the new legislation that came in December 2014, there are 14 different allergens that must be taken into consideration, not just nuts. Intended storage temperatures. Will the product be reheated? Is the reheating essential to destroy microorganisms? Will the food be eaten immediately after reheating? What potential hazards will a food be exposed to, which could lead to abuse potential? And the intended use. Is it intended for any of the at-risk groups? For example, the elderly or the very young, people who are already ill, pregnant women, immunocompromised, etc. So key points, we looked at the steps involved in the implementation of HACCP based on the group Codex Alimentarius, consists of 12 steps. The need for a multidisciplinary approach when appointing the HACCP team. The sources of information available to the HACCP team. The product, recipe, process, and why it's important to identify the likely customers.
Thank you for watching our video. Please take a moment to visit our website by clicking on the link below. We'll see you there.